Yep, my name is Uncle Rizza, and I want to talk to you about something. I want to ask you something. Did cloud just save gaming? Did the cloud, whatever you want to call the shit, did it just save gaming? Obviously, we're watching Titanfall, and there's a lot of hype around Titanfall and the cloud, and a lot of misconceptions, a lot of confusion, a lot of overhype, but nonetheless, they're all real to a certain degree. So I guess let's take a step back and really talk about what is the cloud. The cloud is probably one of the most misused terminology in anything with a circuit. So you go from mobile to traditional computing to, I don't know, probably your dentist's office. They'll have something about their technology in the cloud, and it's get kicked in the nuts. It's really difficult for an average person or a regular consumer out there to understand what this cloud is. You know, especially when it changes and it varies in functionality from platform to platform, from use case to use case. So there's people out there with an iPhone and they have iCloud. They're like, okay, well, this is what iCloud is. And then you get OneDrive, you're like, wait, this is a little different, but the same concept. And then you go to Amazon and you buy an MP3 and they say, oh, it's in your S3 cloud. You're like, wait, what? Then you go get Titanfall. Titan says, yeah, the power of Xbox Live Cloud. You're like, well, I don't get it. Like, what is this all being super power technology thing, the cloud? All it is servers dedicated to handle your commands off cycle, meaning the computer, the phone, the game, the whatever you're on right now is not handling a specific command because there's a server out there on the internet that handles that. And that goes so much deeper. I'm not at work right now. I don't care to explain this shit, but that's basically what it means. Servers that are able to do your dirty work, and you don't require tons of or shitload of hardware. Now then, there was a really good blog post from the creator, one of the creators of was he the creator or maybe one of the developers? It was on Respawn Entertainment's website, and the gentleman he attempted to clear up the cloud and the advantages of the cloud. And it was crazy because I knew exactly what the cloud was and where it applied and made sense and didn't make sense to. But Microsoft's been toting this cloud thing ever since launch, and I couldn't make sense of it with Titanfall. And then Snow had a good point. He said, yeah, that's bullshit because you're telling me it's only possible with the cloud on Xbox One, but that still is a 360 version. Like, that's a very real question to have, or like, some just doesn't add up. So one of the things that they really detailed about quote unquote the cloud was the centralized use of your bandwidth and your connection, meaning it was all server based connections now, or server based hosted in a lot of these older games. And one of the games that really come to mind is Recon and Rainbow Six had this shit bad. When you say host advantage, everybody knows what you're talking about. And host advantage was real because the players were actually being the hosts. So whoever's connection was better got that vote to be the host for the round. And the thing about that is because they were their connection and their Xbox or PlayStation, whatever you were playing on, was the one that was doing the legwork and the computing and first to all the instructions. Their bullets hit you first. And a lot of people never really understood this. It's like, yo, that's bullshit. Like, no, really, that's host advantage. And I mean, some people suck, right? And they start to cry, oh, host advantage. No, you just suck. But there are times where this was a real fucking thing. So one of the big deals about the cloud now is it really takes hosting the game away from players, and the games are all hosted on the servers. Why is this a big deal? Well, if you look at a game like Battlefield, you know, look at EA and how it's, no matter what game they come out with, there's always an issue. They just can't get this server shit right. You know, EA has their rendition, their version of the cloud. They just don't call it the cloud, they call it their servers. But for whatever reason, they just can't get it right. So what Microsoft did with the Xbox Live Cloud is they leveraged a technology, a proven technology that they've had in the enterprise world for a long time. It's a platform called Azure, or Azure, I think is the correct way to pronounce it. And it's really popular, and it's used for so many things across the board. And this is really the basis for Xbox Live's cloud. So when Microsoft got up on stage and said, yeah, we've got 300,000 servers or whatever, like, no, that's a real deal. And the thing about Xbox Azure, and you pair it with the Xbox One, the Xbox Live Cloud, is the availability to scale. So if Titanfall only had 5 people go out and buy it in the first 2 weeks, well then, okay, you only get 5 servers, and you only pay us for 5 servers. But if they had 5 million, then there's a switch, there's a load balancing switch that can be like, oh shit, back up, more servers, more servers, more servers. And it doesn't involve, you know, calling up some ISP somewhere in the corner of the world and saying, yeah, can you go and install this service for me? Can you turn this on? Like, it's all dynamically done and well thought out. And this was a very, leading into price, this was one of the other things that he really detailed was important, because infrastructure like that to run a game is a large budget game, and have it run smoothly is the cost of a small fortune, which is why a lot of these games, big and small, they chose for player hosts instead of, you know, server. And even those that do the big name server stuff, I'm looking at you, Battlefield, still fuck it up. So it's still not easy. And it's hard to say if Titanfall will have a very fluid experience. You know, this will be the make or break it of the Xbox Live Cloud to see how it scales. But judging from the beta, I haven't seen this shit lag once. And that is impressive, especially when they opened it up to everyone. That I thought was the really impressive part. So it's really a twofold thing. It gives the developers something not to worry about, and by that I mean you have a budget, and naturally game developers are going to say, okay, we want to put 100% of our budget toward developing the game, you know, all of our resources to making this game better. But they can't do that because a large portion of that budget has to go over the infrastructure. So when you bring in the equation the Xbox Live Cloud, where you can purchase this infrastructure from Microsoft for a fraction of the cost and not have to worry about it, you just tell them how you want things to work, how you want it to deploy. That's dope. You get a much more focused developer and a much more finished product. Now, the other part of this that still to this day I think is one of the most underrated features in Titanfall is the AI. Now let's think about this for a second. Look at Sony, and every year, every generation actually, Sony does this thing where they'll have like rubber duckies or Viagra pills, and they like to show how many of these things that the CPU can handle at once. And then let's put that in perspective with something like the Xbox One. So you've got the PlayStation 4 with 2 million rubber duckies in a tub, and then you got the Xbox One with 500,000 rubber duckies in the club. But now Microsoft says, you know what? You don't need to have the Xbox render or you know, compute these rubber duckies. You do 500,000 and the cloud will render out the other 1.5. Now it's a whole different ball game. Now it's sort of like, okay, you don't need raw hardware raw hardware power because you can compute these cycles in the cloud. So how do we relate that to the AI? think of Call of Duty, was it Modern Warfare? I remember when I first played it, it was a big fucking deal that there was like 8 soldiers on the screen at once. And as gaming sort of progressed, you started to see 8 soldiers turned into like, you know, 16 soldiers and 24 soldiers. And I'm not talking about online, I'm talking about offline. It's really hard to have each of those computer generated players do some random shit. That's a lot to compute. So let's take that, extract it, and put it in an online scenario where there's 12 real players running around doing completely random shit, and each of those players now calls in this big ass mech warrior that needs to be doing any number of random things. And then there's 4 different type of bots that are just running around doing any number of random things. That, I would honestly say, is too much for I would even go to the length and say a PC type graphics card to compute. That's a lot. That really is a lot. And it's dope to see that the cloud really offers them that. And then you scale it back to something like a Forza, where, okay, Forza 5 is constantly monitoring the community. It's constantly taking snapshots and recording data on how you drive. You know, how fast you go in certain turns. Do you cut early? Do you cut late? These behavioral habits, and it's constantly uploading them, and it's constantly monitoring them. And then you bring it and you deliver it in such a package where you take out computer players and you replace them with this profile of a person that was just playing the game 2 minutes ago, but it's not actually in the game. And there's 11 of those on the track. That's a lot. It may not be as intensive as something like TITANFALL, but you know, the cloud really did help a lot there, because now the computer the Xbox doesn't have to waste cycles trying to make AI. You get what I mean? Let the servers handle that. That is really dope. But yes, Microsoft is, and this is why I love my Xbox. I feel like it's definitely the most innovative gaming anything on the platform, in the gaming world right now. But Microsoft isn't the only one really making way here. When you talk Sony, that Gaichai shit, or PlayStation Now, that is super dope. That is the cloud. So there's servers out there that are strong enough or powerful enough to emulate PlayStation 3 games. You really gotta understand how powerful that is, because for you super nerd thieves, that's what I'm gonna call you, a thief out there who use a lot of emulators and ROMs, you know it's kind of hard to find a PlayStation 3 emulator. And it's part of it is the architecture and the cell processor, right? And how hard it is to decrypt that, because that's what you have to do when you emulate shit. But Sony has those keys, whatever. But the PlayStation, the cell processor, is still not a joke. It's still a very powerful platform. And to tell me that you can emulate that on a virtual server and then feed a connection down with a certain or constant resolution and bitrate with no latency to a fucking TV with no console, or a phone, or a tablet, that's super dope. That's the type of shit that we really needed. And I think it's unfortunate that people get into these fucking arguments about resolution wars and all of this fucking, like, these stupid specs. Like, yo, this is where the real magic is happening. Like, this is where MMOs are gonna start to become damn near real life. Can you imagine a game like Grand Theft Auto in a living, breathing world? In a world where you sign on, you play your game, and if there's 2 million people playing this game that purchase Grand Theft Auto, there's 2 million people in your world doing random shit. And you sign off, and it's like you never sign off, because the game's always keeping track of what you do, how you do it, where you go, the type of shit you like to do, and it represents you even when you're not on 24 hours a day. And from my understanding, that's how Grand Theft Auto sort of works with the 3 different characters. They're always doing shit even though you're not selecting them. Imagine that was only 3 characters. Imagine everyone in the Grand Theft Auto world like that. Dopeness. My personal opinion is the Cloud is very real, and it didn't click to me until I read that post that the dudes at Respawn Entertainment wrote, and because I couldn't wrap my head around it, like, why do they keep saying the Cloud? What the fuck are they using this thing for? But here we go. This shit is stupid dope, and I think Sony's gonna come around, and they haven't announced anything, but it's Sony. They can't be fucking clueless. So I really expect, even though they haven't announced anything yet, by the next year or so, they're gonna start saying, let's do it. Their Cloud, it's tough to really gauge this as a conversation, right? Is Sony's Cloud as powerful as Microsoft Cloud? I don't know. They're used for 2 completely different things, and they'll continue to be used for 2 completely different things because their universes are different. Their concept of gaming is different. Their ideologies, their visions for games are different. The type of games you get on both platforms are completely different. So we may see Cloud kicking ass in Titanfall 2, and then Cloud becomes that Gran Turismo thing I was explaining in Infamous Third Son, whatever you want to call it. And I really want to see. And one thing that I think will help the gaming industry across the board is the fact that the Cloud as a whole, not just the Xbox Live Cloud, or the Cloud as a whole, takes away a lot of focus from developers, a lot of focus on infrastructure and on what they should be doing. And not only is the focus, it also helps with the budget situation. Instead of allocating half your budget to having this thing actually run day one online and not crash and burn all the servers, now you can allocate 20% of your budget. Well, there you go. Look at all that extra money. Look at that money you just freed up to get more dope shit in there, to develop better DLC. Where your margin profits are better. You don't have to rake gamers in the ass for fucking microtransactions. It's so exciting when you think about the stress and the weight that the Cloud alleviates from so many different angles. And even multiplayer titles, you don't have to worry about server lag, host advantage, random disconnect and shit. Like lightning fast matchmaking. This type of shit is so dope. My personal opinion, because I'm rambling now, right? My personal opinion is the Cloud, as ambiguous as you want to call it, just saved gaming. It's your boy, Uncle Rizzo. Holla.